Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Tyria Talk. My name is Richie, and this show is all about the upcoming MMO, Guild Wars 2. This is episode number 25, and today we're going to be talking about whether Guild Wars 2 is a PvP Centric game or a PvE Centric game. I've actually seen several forum posts that kind of debate this a bit, and some comments to different shows and whatnot, and I just thought it would be an interesting topic just to kind of explore, and of course people are going to probably argue about it quite a bit. But I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts around the subject. Now, before I get too far, I don't want to make the assumption that people know what PvP and PvE mean. So just real quick, PvP means player versus player. PvE is player versus environment. Obviously, I would expect most people to know that, but just in case. Player versus environment is actually like fighting monsters and things not controlled by other players in the game, doing things that are designed by the game designers rather than having other players infect your experience or go against you. So, I've seen some forum posts, like I said, and usually the debate starts kind of like this. Somebody will say, well, Guild Wars 2 is primarily a PvP-based game. And immediately following, somebody will go in and go, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? There's so much PvP, PvE in this game, it's not even funny. You can't actually even put more PvE in this game because there's no room for it. And for whatever reason, the PvE supporters always sound like 88-year-old coal miners in my head. So why does this debate even come up? Why do people, jump in and start thinking that Guild Wars 2 is maybe more of a PvP-based game? Because obviously there's tons of PvE content in the game. No one can dispute that. I mean, you've got the leveling experience, from level 1 to 80. Though, to be fair, you can level from 1 to 80 in World versus World, which is technically more PvP-ish. So you can't necessarily say the leveling experience in Guild Wars 2 is strictly PvE-based. But there's dynamic events, there's your personal story, there's exploring the world, trying to map every little bit out, finding different hidden, treasures and, jumping puzzles and different things like that. There's doing the dungeons, the story mode dungeons, the explorable mode dungeons, there's crafting, so there's tons and tons of stuff to do PvE. And on the PvP side, you've got these world versus world, which is like server versus server versus server combat. That's a 2-week-long match. And you also have the structured PvP, which are more kind of like battlegrounds. So there's plenty to do on both sides. So why do people say PvP-centric more often? And I think what it kind of boils down to is, think about the game 6 months, 8 months after it launches, okay? What are the majority of the players going to be doing? Now, there's going to be tons of people that just aren't interested in PvP at all, and they love the game Guild Wars 2 because of its PvE content. We're not disputing that. I'm kind of trying to make a case of why maybe people are labeling it as a PvP-based game, and I think it comes back to this: what are people going to be doing 8 months after the launch of the game? So there's going to be a point where, you know what, I've explored the game enough for my own personal taste. I've done the dungeons enough for my own personal taste. I've created enough alts for my own personal taste. So what am I going to be doing in the game? And I think there's going to be a large portion of the population that's going to be doing the world versus world and the structured PvP. It's a sustainable, renewable source of content on the PvP side. So think about it. If you want to kind of do a new dungeon, you have to wait for ArenaNet to put in a new dungeon. And if you want to do new dynamic events, you have to wait for ArenaNet to put in new dynamic events. And they're going to be adding new content to the game. So that's obvious. But the renewable, the recycled source of content is actually battling against other players in either world versus world or structured PvP. Every time you do it, it's different because you have different people, different skill levels, different builds, different group compositions, and it's just it's constantly exciting and adapting and evolving. And you don't really need new maps to be excited about PvP. Think of a game like League of Legends. I know I bring that up all the time, like League of Legends and World of Warcraft. Those are the games I go to a lot for my examples because those are the games I've played, so that makes sense. League of Legends for a long time had one map, and people play that game a ton. And I'm getting a text message. I got a one-word text message from my wife. It says, "No." That was important enough to kind of So, but it's kind of my own fault because I didn't mute it, right? Mute. It's now muted. Okay, so think about League of Legends. It only has one map, and the map is important. But as long as the map is good, you don't need to cycle in tons and tons of new maps to keep people playing the game, because the other players is what makes it interesting. So it's going to be the same kind of thing in Guild Wars 2. Everyone's going to have their personal limit of when they get tired of exploring or doing the dungeons that are in the game or doing the dynamic events, or you've mastered all the crafting. There's a point where everyone gets their fill of that. And at that point, you're either going to stop playing for a little while you wait for them to add new content in the game, or you're going to switch over to the PvP. And I think that's really the main reason why a lot of people are saying it's more of a PvP-centric game, because it's got that sustainability without ArenaNet having to add new content to it. Now, and one other thing to add to that, ArenaNet has said very specifically that they want Guild Wars 2 to have an esport component to it. They're working on a spectator mode. It's not going to be ready for launch, but they want to have a spectator mode for the structured PvP. And you know what? That was a lot of it. And if it is successful, if they actually promote this as an esport, I think it can be very successful. They can have tournaments go. You can have the best ranked players competing. People will there'll be casters, announcing it. There'll be people watching it on the internet, Twitch TV, at conventions and different things. And it can actually do a lot for promoting the game and sustaining the game long term. So I think that's another component of it as well. Now, does this mean if you like PvE and only PvE and hate PvP that you should be freaking out because this label might be put onto your precious game? I don't think so. I think you should try to ignore that, because you play the game how you want to play it. Look at myself. I am primarily a PvE player. I love PvP. I play in every MMO I've ever played and most games that have an option. I do the PvP as well. I find it fun, but I don't know if you've noticed, I'm a little bit older than the average gamer, and the young little whippersnappers, they've got the reflexes on me. So I'm usually not amazing at PvP. So PvE is more my focus. That said, I have no issue whatsoever with Guild Wars 2 being labeled as a PvP-centric game. I kind of get it. I understand it, and I don't think people should be afraid of those labels either. It basically boils down to there is PvE. There's a ton of PvE content and a ton of PvP content. But if you really are honest and look towards the long-term effects of the game, what is going to keep people keep playing? It's probably going to be the PvP side. Now, it's interesting because I've said before, Guild Wars 2 is not a gear-based game. It's a skill-based game, and there's no gear grind. There's no treadmill that you keep walking on to get the next level of gear, and that's a good thing. And I think most people are looking for that breath of fresh air. They want to get off that treadmill because we're lazy and we don't want to do exercise. No, that has nothing to do with anything. So it is a good thing that there's no gear treadmill in the game. But this is an interesting byproduct of it. If there was a gear treadmill in the game, if they did require you to do like these dungeons over and over and over again to get the best gear because you want to be ready when they release the next content, because you're not going to be able to beat the next content without this gear. If they put that in, then you can make the argument that, hey, long-term people are going to be doing as much PvE as PvP because they kind of feel like they have to in order to keep up. So it's interesting that we don't want the gear treadmill in the game. But that's kind of what makes things a little bit more PvE focused in a certain regard. And, you can put that grind on the PvP side as well. But I think long term, people will just play the PvE for as long as it keeps them interested. And then they will either move on to another game or they will get really super involved into the PvP side. So that's kind of where I am about it. I know there's going to be tons of people that might not like that. They're strictly PvE players and they don't want the game to be labeled PvP. But I kind of wanted to just summarize my thoughts on it and kind of, in a non-emotional way, try to bring up why people might be saying this sort of thing. Whether you believe it's true or not, that's kind of debatable, but this kind of goes into why people make that comment that it's a PvP-centric game. And, I'm interested in knowing what you think. What do you think about this? Do we have to, is a label appropriate? Does it even matter? I don't think it matters having a label at all on it. But why do you think people call it a PvP-focused game? Why do you think people call it a PvE-focused game and vice versa? Leave me a comment below. Hit the like button so that, people can hear about this video a little bit more often, comment, share it with your friends. I really appreciate all of the comments. I try to respond to as many of them as I feel appropriate. And please click the subscribe link so that you can be notified when future videos are released. Okay, you can also contact me on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter if you have any questions or just want to say hi. I appreciate it very much, and thanks for watching. Didn't I just get through saying there was so much PvE in this game you couldn't even fit any more PvE, and there's going saying it's a PvP game? That's it! I'm out of here! Can't take it!